Welcome to Neon Cobra. Let's kick into it. At the top here, I'd love to ask you to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's how I gauge community involvement and engagement. And I'd love to hear more from you on these videos. With that in mind, let's actually kick into it. So, this week we're going to be doing a 5-minute segment around billing fundamentals. A lot of times when partners are looking to get into Azure, it can be an entire change to their practice, right? Sometimes it's even just a matter of just aligning billing models and frequencies. So when I get the question of, how do I build this? How do I protect myself? What do I do? The best way to go about this is kind of you have to assess your landscape, assess how you do things, right? Review the type of billing model you want, and I'll talk a little bit about those, but also understand how the billings come into you, right? Not every distributor sends you the bill at the same intervals. Even just a couple of years ago, Microsoft themselves bills from the 15th to the 15th. You're never getting a first or 31st invoice. Some distributors may follow this model. Others may have more of a trailing 30 because they can't reconcile billing fast enough, right? So understanding what the billing frequency is can be a large boon to your organization because that determines whether you're acting as a net 30 for your clients or whether you're holding any sort of risk where if a client exits the organization or leaves your organization, you might have a trailing 30 days notice coming up that you still have to invoice them. So understanding frequency is important. Once you have that in, I always recommend aligning the billing to when you bill your managed service agreement, right? If you're, I've seen some organizations, they like to bill at the very first of the month, but with Pax 8, you don't get your bill till the 5th of the month. So if you're trying to forward bill for the entire month on the first, when you don't even have your charges on the 5th, you essentially have to float a 30-day consumption for them. You're doing a net 30, or you need to change and align your billing dates accordingly. So usually I would like to say give yourself a little bit of wiggle room, understand when your billing's going to come in and try to align it all at once so you're not trying to chase numerous invoices with clients. It's just a lump sum, and then that gives you some flexibility to the billing models. So a couple of approaches. I know one of the things we do at Pax 8 is we actually educate and help people decide the best go-to-market strategies, including the best billing model. Now, this is going to determine a lot on how you invoice, how you go, but some of the more common ones we see is straight MSRP pass through, right? Whatever you get billed from Microsoft and from your distributor, you pass that through to your client. You retire your back end incentives and rebates and your margin, right? The slim pickings that are on the backside there. But then you use that as an enablement to sell your other high margin services, your managed service agreements. Maybe you're tacking on additional consulting fees, whatever the case is. So in this case, Azure acts as a mechanism to deliver your high value services, right? Creates a little bit of stickiness. The second approach that we've seen is just a margin markup. So you take MSRP and maybe you throw an extra 10, 15, 20% margin on top of that. So while you're still billing usage, what you're actually getting is a little bit more margin on that side. What I like about that is it's kind of very low barrier to entry. You don't really have to reinvent the wheel or design new billing platforms, but you do have to be able to explain the charges to your client, right? If at any one point they start shopping around and they give an invoice to somebody, that person now has the immediate ability to undercut you just at MSRP and then make value throughout other areas, right? So don't get too greedy. But what I do see a lot of organizations do is they maybe bump a couple points into Azure in order to maybe offset a less than profitable service agreement, right? So they can be a little bit more competitive on the cost per seat side. Instead of retiring 55, 65%, maybe they retire 40, 45 and get an extra 10 points from the Azure. Now, the third model we tend to see is like a fixed fee pricing. And this can either be done in a cost per seat fashion or the entire environment. And then you add and bake your margin in, and then you just do a single line item called like cloud infrastructure. Now, the advantages of this is you can get very creative on where your margin comes from, right? If the environment costs $1,000 a month, but they have the proclivity to spend two, and you break that down in a cost per seat, and then you hide that in your services, what you end up finding is the client has a single cost for their user. It makes it really easy to understand when I hire, when I fire, when I need improvements to the environment, how much does it cost every time? So it makes it easier to play with the sliders to ensure you've got a level of profitability in your clients, right? And this also allows you to go back and reinvent that cost per seat when there's maybe a large change. If the environment now no longer requires an application server, or they're bringing a new line of business app on, that's an opportunity for you to reset the counter on essentially what you charge them cost per seat. And that's where you need to bring in your entire agreements and the profitability matrix of, are they profitable? Do I need to hide some money in Azure to get them to where I need them to be? So this is a very, very hard conversation, very deep to get in 5 minutes, but hopefully I got enough of that there for you. If you have any further questions or maybe some approaches to this, feel free to reach out. I'm an open book on this kind of stuff, and we can get you to where you need to be. Anyways, we'll catch you next time.